Cool.
All right. Well, before we jump into a one-on-one interview with Mattie, we're going to do our 1 minute AMRAP. So we're going to jump this thing off with Mattie, aka the Muscle Wizard. Mattie, do you know how this works?
I'm pretty sure.
Awesome. Well, for the listeners, here's your reminder. We're going to give Mattie as many questions as he can answer in 1 minute. The questions are either one word or short answer, and your job is to answer as many questions as possible. So, got the timer. Jake, are you ready?
Ready.
All right. Mattie's ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Jake, after the first question, I'm going to start the timer.
All right. Your worst home gym purchase.
Glute ham developer.
Favorite barbell you own.
My Bells of Steel safety squat bar.
Powerlifting or BJJ.
Jiu-jitsu.
Powerlifting or strongman.
Strongman.
Squats or deadlifts.
Deadlifts.
Bells of Steel or Titan.
Bells of Steel.
Bells of Steel or Rep.
Bells of Steel.
Titan or Rep.
Rep.
Open trap bar or SSB if you could only have one.
SSB.
What's your favorite tattoo?
Actually, earlier today I have a giant wizard chess piece that I'm working on, and I did more on that today.
Biggest fitness myth.
Magic foods that are like people say they'll say like, oh, cucumbers are a negative calorie food, things like that.
Solid. Jake, how do you do?
9, 10, 11.
11 is a solid score.
Solid score.
Sweet. All right, well, let's kick it off with this one-on-one interview with Mattie, aka the Muscle Wizard. And speaking of Muscle Wizard, not many people can say that name and say, where did that come from? So can you explain the username?
Yeah, it's my coaching business name, but it came as kind of a joke. I'm a giant like Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy nerd. And there's been an on-running joke on the internet for years that if there was art that would float around of like a big jacked like muscle wizard, and the joke was like, if there was a muscle wizard, oh, he only casts like fist. And friends of mine would joke like, well, you're clearly the muscle wizard because I'm this big jack nerd. And I had been coaching people for a while, but when I decided to go public with it after being encouraged, I needed a name for something, and it was perfect for the niche I fit in the market. When you are a coach, you have to like find your niche, and mine is I work with a lot of nerds who want to get in better shape, so it just kind of fits.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to when and why did you start a home gym?
So I had always wanted one after I got into lifting. I started mine after my divorce from my son's mom because I was always told that I wasn't allowed to have one. So after we split, like the first thing I did was like, well, I'm gonna build a home gym. So 2017, I think it was like the spring of 2017, I started getting stuff.
That's awesome. What did it first look like? And then what has it grown to today?
Well, so anybody who follows me knows I have got all sorts of crap now. What it looks like now is a stark difference than when I started. When I started, I literally like got a bunch of money together and I ordered some cap plates from Amazon. Titan at the time had one squat rack that you could order, and it was like $200. So I had a Titan squat rack, some cap plates, a bench that a family member gave me that was like from the 70s that I've got video somewhere of me benching like 380 on it, and it was like super shaky and like terrifying. And then I bought an Ohio Power Bar. That was my like one, like I gotta buy a good bar, and that's all I had. I squatted my first 500 pounds in that setup. It started at that, and now like over the years, it's morphed into like this monster setup. I've got, big custom rack and custom bars and all sorts of stuff. A lot of the big changes came during COVID, actually. Like when you start a home gym, unless you're somebody that like has watched these podcasts or follow your guys' pages and like take the advice and plan for a while and like, oh, hey, make sure you buy really well at first so you don't have to later. Like a lot of people start like I did, where you just start with what you can get and then over time you replace things. And that's how it started. And over time I would get new things, or like I would buy a certain type of bar and it was crap and I'd have to replace it. And then during COVID, there was a massive change in my gym. It started with the rack, and like I've got this crazy custom purple and teal rack with like custom archway that was done for me. There was a guy that I became friends with during COVID who I met through jiu-jitsu, who he had started to make some racks for friends during COVID because, like we all know, stuff was scarce to get a hold of during the pandemic. And he started just making racks for his buddies and decided after getting requests, like, oh, I could try to make a business. So Circle City Racks was born out of that. A couple of the garage gym pages started sharing his stuff and he started getting a bunch of demand. He and I became buddies because he lived in Beach Grove, which isn't far from me. He does jiu-jitsu, I do jiu-jitsu. I invited him up to an open mat at my academy, and it went from eventually I wanted to buy a rack from him when I could get the money together because it's a good chunk of change for a custom rack. Went from that to him coming up and he's like, have you ever thought about being a model? And I kind of laughed and I was like, what are you talking about? And it went from me wanting to get a rack eventually to he was launching a line of racks and a website. He needed somebody for the pictures. So he was like, you've got a decent following. Like, you're a cool guy. Like, you're big, strong dude. You know, I've got some powerlifting records and stuff. He's like, come do these pictures. You can use the photos for your stuff too. And I'll do the squat rack for you at cost. So I got like a $5,000 rack for the cost of materials just for going to do photos. So during COVID, I got the rack and it's beautiful and amazing. And then during that time, I was fortunate. I know a lot of people were unfortunate with their job situation, but I work in public service. So my job's always going to be there. And so finances weren't a problem. And I was saving a lot of money because we weren't doing anything, you know, because nobody was allowed to go anywhere or do anything. So I just started investing in the gym, and I replaced my trap bar. I had Black Widow training gear make a custom bar for me because when I deadlifted 1,000 pounds on my Titan bar, the sleeves bent. And so, you know, that was the next piece I got. I had to make me a couple bars and just start adding more and more and more. And now I've got this crazy gym. Like I wouldn't even want to try to guess how much money I've invested in this over the years, but it went from crappy bench that I almost died on probably a couple times and some cap weights and a Titan rack to all sorts of crazy stuff.
1,000 pounds on a Titan bar.
Yeah. No, honestly,
you hear every day.
You know what? Like, people give Titan a lot of crap because of their early stuff, but I've had plenty of their things over the years and have never had a problem. I've had 3 of their racks. My first rack was a Titan rack, and then I upgraded to a 3x3 they had, but it was like a stand, and I decided, no, I want a power rack, so then I got their 2x3 rack. I squatted close to 800 pounds in that rack and dumped it multiple times with no problems. I deadlifted in the 8s and 9s for tons of reps on that trap bar. And then it was just getting beat up so much. I don't even think it was the bar's fault, to be honest with you. It was really beefy. It's just that much weight, like over and over and over and over for months at a time. It was just getting beat up. So, and the 1,000 was just the final straw. So by the end of it, like the sleeve was like bent like this and you couldn't get plates on it. So, I had Black Widow make me a custom, trap bar. If you watch that video, actually, like the sleeves weren't long enough. So I was like strapping weights on with bands and stuff. And so like he made mine with like custom length sleeves and all sorts of crazy stuff. But that bar is really solid. So anybody out there who needs a good trap bar and doesn't want to spend like a crap ton of money, the Titan one is fine. So
we'll need to scrape up that video somewhere.
I've got it. I can send it to you.
Yeah, do that, please. I know I remember seeing it back in the day.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Speaking of the Circle City weights, do you know what happened to them? It just kind of seemed like they just went out of business or
yeah.
continued
So
pursuing.
without saying too much of what I know, because I know the guy personally, the safe thing I can say is basically what I think happened is, so during that time, nobody could get equipment. People saw, oh, hey, here's somebody making equipment. He got an influx of people trying to get equipment, and he's just starting out. He couldn't keep up with stock, and I think it was just he bit off more than he could chew. And like his family has a steel shop, and he ended up going back to help with family business. I think it just ended up being way too much too fast, and he couldn't maintain it. And I think it was one of those things like, oh, I'll start a rack company because I love fitness and, live the dream kind of thing. And just sometimes it's too much and you can't sustain it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned a few of your primary pieces of equipment already, the custom rack. You mentioned you love your SSB and the custom trap bar. Would you mind just giving us a high level look at, or a high level explanation of just some of your primary pieces of equipment
that I use like on a regular basis?
Yeah, or just some of your favorites.
My favorites, I have to say my rack, just because it's gorgeous. Nobody else has this rack, and they never will because the company doesn't exist anymore. But also just like the thing that people tell me the most is like they just don't see racks in these colors. So I don't know. I love the rack, and then it's just morphed a lot. Like I've added a lot to it over the time that I've had it. The trap bar that I have is amazing. I mean, I haven't got to post much with it lately because of my injury, but it's an open trap bar and has extended sleeves and stuff, and it's got like a custom laser cut logo on it. So I'm a big fan of that. I love my Bells of Steel safety squat bar in the background. My primary that I use is for squatting. I use the safety bar a lot. For deadlifting, unless I'm peaking for like a powerlifting meet, I'm using the trap bar a lot because it's just a little easier on my body for like doing jujitsu and stuff. I don't know. I've got so much cool stuff. Those are my favorites. Aside from that, I've just got like some sweet chairs and stuff in here that I like. But those are my favorite pieces.
Yeah, you've been building your gym for 5, going on 6 years now.
Yeah.
What kind of mistakes have you made along the way? Would you identify anything you've done as like a mistake that you wish you wouldn't have done?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I would think to say, wait and buy nicer things and do more research first. That was initially what I wanted to say, but I don't think that's honest of me, because I think me starting in any capacity did a lot for me. Like at that time, like I was in a bad place emotionally, and me developing the garage gym like did a lot for me, and it gave me a place of my own. And even starting with some of the crappy equipment that I had, it was mine, and it was something that I could like pour myself into, and it became a hobby for me as well. So initially, what my thought to answer was like, oh, wait, make sure you have money for like really good stuff that you don't have to like replace and buy stuff. But the stuff that I think was real mistake has to do with like space related things. If I could go back, I would probably, in retrospect, instead of gotten a big 6-post rack, as much as I love my 6-post rack and it's gorgeous, I probably would have had him make me like a custom yoke because it would take up less space. You can still squat and bench out of it, plus do a bunch of other stuff, and I would have a lot more room in here. I still got plenty of room, but it eats up a good amount of room. Like I just built some like lever arms that I'd gotten Vendetta's new brackets for, and I had moved my rack around. It just like created space challenges because like now I've got, arms sticking out of the rack, which creates even more space that's eating up for me able to use them. So a lot of my mistakes have been space. So in the rapid fire, it asked about like my biggest, I think it was something along the lines of like my biggest mistake of something I bought. And it was the glute ham developer, the GHD, because for as little as that thing gets used and how much space it takes up, like I sold it after a couple months because I don't personally, from a coaching perspective, I don't think it was really blowing my lifts up, and it was such a big footprint. So most of my mistakes, I think, have been space related. There's been a couple of bars I've bought that I'm like, maybe I should have waited. Like I had Titan's first safety squat bar. I don't know if you guys ever played with that or saw it, but it was a nightmare. The angle of it was like straight down, like it was terrible. And I probably should have waited on stuff like that. But most of my mistakes are completely just space related. I should have optimized a little better for that. But other than that, I think I've done a pretty good job.
Very cool. Yeah, you're speaking Adam and I's language when you say just start. You don't have to buy necessarily the best equipment, but
Absolutely.
I mean, as a couple of guys that like when we started our home gyms, we didn't have much extra dollars, so like just getting what you can. Yeah, when you just getting what you can to get going and upgrade as you go along the way, definitely can't go wrong doing it that way.
No, and you can build to something really cool too later on. Like I never thought I'd get to the setup that I have now. My setup now is bananas. I never in a million years would think that I have what I have now, especially when it started out. Like I've got videos of in the old garage, and I'm like on no mats, just concrete in the garage and crappy rack and stuff. So I completely agree with that sentiment. Just start with what you can. I know guys that started with like a Bowflex. It's like funny as it is to me because like I powerlift and stuff. Like it's better than nothing, and you can always replace or get other things when you can afford it. And not everybody can afford some of the other stuff.
All right. So you're also very well known and are getting quite a bit of attention from the community with your home gym hacks. Can you explain some of your favorite hacks that you do?
My current favorite is I just recently built a rack attached like weight stack and pulley system. That's top of the list just because it solved a lot of problems for me. I've had like the weight pin kind of set up before. It's just so inconvenient, like to have to unload, like you unclip everything and unload. So trying to come up with a system for that, it became so convenient. And for me at this point in my life, the garage gym, part of the appeal is the convenience factor. So just being able to like clip in and go is awesome. So I just I scored a sweet deal on Facebook Marketplace on some pretty much brand new selectorized weights, but didn't have anything else with it. And I just DIY'd the rest of it. And so I built a pulley out of like C-channel and some other metal, and the rods are like like conduit from Home Depot and a few other things. But like if you look at it from the outside, like it looks pretty nice and it works perfectly and it suits my needs. So I went from like I grew up like without a dad. I didn't learn how to use tools or anything. Anything I've done handy as an adult, I had to figure out myself, or I've had like friends show me things here and there. Like my buddy Ben has helped me on. I've had other projects I've done in the past. Like when I built my wizard arms, he helped me with the lever arms, like some stuff like that. So going from like doing that to like now I monkey with everything. It's fun and I'm proud of myself. But the lat pull down is freaking awesome. I made the lever arms out of I had flip down safeties, and instead of buying lever arms when I knew I was getting these brackets, I was like, I don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on some tubes because it's all they are really. So I knew I wanted to get like strap safeties, so I got strap safeties, and I was like, I've got these flip down safeties, they're just tubes. So I went to work with like a angle grinder, and I bought some utility loop things from Stray Dog and built lever arms. I just shortened those down to 24 inches recently, and I prefer those. But I've done those. I've in the beginning, like early on, I did a lot more stuff. Like I had all sorts of weird stuff made out of wood. I've done all sorts of different pulley systems before. The belt squat was DIY. I had come up with that with Circle City Racks, and he was going to start trying to market it, but then the business folded. But I had come up with a Jacob style attachment for a belt squat, which I've got the only existing one now. And so I've done that. I had it mounted to the back of the rack for a while, and then had that rigged up to a pulley system, which worked really nice, and was better than like a weight horn because you could load from the sides, and the movement arm of it is a lot smoother, which is really nice. But it was taking up a lot of space. So then that's when I ended up wanting to come up with the weight stack. And so I built that here just recently, and it's been awesome. Outside of that, I've done all sorts of stuff, like jerk blocks and deadlift platforms and, all the typical stuff. But the coolest stuff I've done has definitely been like the weight stack and pulley system that I made.
Yeah, I was just peeking at that weight stack. I mean, that's awesome. Jake was mentioning when you were off for a second, like you spent like $30 on it. Is that right? You found the stack somewhere cheap?
Oh yeah. There was a guy on Facebook Marketplace who had them in plastic that is just the weights, the selectorized weights. It's like 195 pounds of them for $30 total. So it's a steal. Like that's highway robbery. So I couldn't not try. And so total on the project, I think like $100.
Wow, that's insane. People are offering that right now for Jake. The attachment right now for like Rogue, like the side selectorized. Yeah. I mean, you're talking like $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the new Apollo from Rep, probably about $1,000. Yeah.
Hey, Mattie, what about the seat? Did you DIY that lat seat as well?
I did with the help of Jake. So he had an extra seat. Yeah, he had an extra seat. I had hit up we've got a chat with a bunch of the guys in the community, and I was kind of asking around like, hey, does anybody know where I can just buy just a seat? Because Rep, they're out of stock, and he had an extra one, so I just DIY'd it. It's just a Rep seat that I just made. I made a bracket out of wood and attached it to the bottom.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, works great. I mean, and I made like a low pulley for it that I just used a shackle with just like a pulley on a carabiner, and I've got an extra cable. I've got a pulley with an extra cable that I set on the side, and then when I want to do low pulleys, I can do low pulley work too.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
and I did not cue you up for that.
No, he did not. No, I was looking at it. I was like, man, that looks sweet.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to kind of more of like your personal journey. But you are down quite a bit of weight. You used to be about 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Can you explain just how you shed that weight?
Yeah. So I was 400 pounds. I was always a fat kid growing up. I'm Italian. My grandparents immigrated here from Tuscany. So I grew up in a kitchen with little fat Italian women. And it's hard to not be overweight, like in that household. So I grew up, big kid, and I wrestled in school, and that kept me from getting too fat, but I was still I wrestled 275 in high school. When I left high school, I was no longer wrestling, but I was still eating like an idiot, and I ballooned up over time to 400 pounds. I had my daughter at the end of high school. Her mom ran off, and so I found myself a young single dad, and my doctor at the time was like, if you don't change something, you're going to have a heart attack by the time you're 35, because I had a bunch of health problems, and it hit me really hard. My father left when I was 3 years old, never saw him again. I know how hard that is on a kid, and I was like, I can't leave this kid without a parent. And so it hit me really hard. And I had already been interested in the UFC was starting to become a thing at that time. I had some buddies who were getting into it because I wrestled in school and stuff. And for whatever reason, even though I'd never been in a fight in my life, because I've always been a nice kid, never been in trouble, big nerd. I was bullied really bad, actually, in school. For whatever reason, I thought, I'm definitely going to do this MMA. So I joined a gym I started training, and like I had my first fight. I was like 315, and then just was going down and down. And I got down to like 230 pounds just through MMA and jiu-jitsu training. I was not educated on nutrition at that time. I was just training like a madman. I fought professionally for a while, and then I started professional wrestling. And because I grew up on professional wrestling, was a giant professional wrestling fan. So I started training for that and traveling and stuff. And one of the big things with wrestling is you need to look as good as you can, like physically. It's gotten a lot better now. Like you can get by on your talent a lot better nowadays. But usually the better you look, the more eyes you're going to draw. So a lot of the guys, like, are always, hey, what are you doing for diet? What are you doing for training? That's how I got into lifting. So, I mean, I lifted in school. Like we had a conditioning class, but like I didn't squat because I was terrified. I would bench, but it was terrible. So I lifted from the time I was 13, but I wasn't like really lifting. And then I remember I was probably like 280, and a buddy of mine had dropped a bunch of weight, and like one of my wrestler buddies doing one of the bodybuilding.com workouts and just like eating like a bodybuilder basically. So I remember the first workout I did was Jim Stepani had a free shortcut to shred workout on bodybuilding.com that I did. And I started with that. That's what got me into lifting. And that cascaded into like, I was on all the bodybuilding.com forums, and like, you start cooking for yourself and eating right and learning more about nutrition. And I got down to like 165 pounds at one point, because this is before I got into powerlifting. I was doing jiu-jitsu, MMA, and like circuit training, essentially lifting. Then I had a bad breakup. A girl that I was with for 6 years, she cheated on me and left me. So I was depressed and gained some weight. But the fortunate thing is during that time I found powerlifting. Because at that time, powerlifting was starting to get more popular on Instagram and stuff, and it started to get shared a little more. And when I was a kid, I used to watch World's Strongest Man on ESPN, but I never thought I could do that because I'm 5'10". I don't have the genetics for that kind of thing. Those guys are 6'5" to 7 foot tall monsters, and I just never thought that kind of training is something I could do. But then, powerlifting was becoming popular, and you're seeing all these people of different weight class sizes doing it. And I was like, well, this looks cool. So then I started powerlifting, quickly found like I really like feeling strong. And, even though I was like in this depressed state, I was lifting the whole time. So I was putting on a lot of mass. And during that time, I was getting like nutrition certifications and learning more. And then it just, over the years, it's just been a cycle of like, now that, over the years I've known more and more, it became this obsession with strength training and like in how it makes me feel. And so it started with MMA and jiu-jitsu, and I still do those things, but like I am now this, beefy powerlifter who does jiu-jitsu, as opposed to before I was, fat and did jiu-jitsu, and then skinny and doing jiu-jitsu. And now everywhere I go, I can't go to a jiu-jitsu competition without the first thing people say is, "Oh my God, your legs are humongous," and stuff like that. It's just not normal in like that realm. So that's pretty much the short version of the journey. Is I was big fat nerd kid who didn't want to die, and started with jiu-jitsu, led into lifting because of pro wrestling, and here I am years later, deadlift 1,000 pounds, squat 1,000 pounds of competition. And it's a big, big part of my life now.
I feel like in that story, there's like 20 like little nuggets we could just expand on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That
story's incredible.
Thank you.
To keep the flow going though. So you really got into like the educating part of it, like nutrition and stuff like that. You're into coaching right now.
Yeah.
Can you explain like what you do, like as far as like coaching and nutrition is involved?
Yeah, of course. There's a million online coaches out there, and a lot of what I do isn't very different. It's kind of earlier I was talking about you find your niche, and a lot of people who come to me are people who haven't lifted before, I get a lot of just like nerds who like, hey, like you get me, you understand, and or people that like they know that I was 400 pounds and I had to work my butt off to get where I'm at. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with over the years that, you know, it's different when you can have that connection with somebody of that understanding of like, I've been through this. And that's why I think a lot of people who come to me, and that's why, is because like there's I understand it because I've been through it. Whereas like there's lots of coaches out there that like they're shredded and look amazing, but they've looked like that most of their life. Whereas like I had to earn this, and like I've been through like the body dysmorphia and like the depression that comes with like being that size and the struggle. So I mean, my coaching is I work with powerlifters, strongmen. I work with housewives. I've got a dad in California who is, I think, 49, that he went from 305 pounds down to 240. He's ripped and jacked, and now his son is working out to some capacity. I've worked with like a little bit of everybody. I worked with jiu-jitsu athletes. Basically, whatever their goal is, we work towards it. Whether that's people who are overweight and they want to lose weight in a healthy fashion and not crash themselves, or people who are like, hey, I want to compete in powerlifting or strongman, or just people who are like, hey, I've never done any of this before, and like, you get me, and I just want to get in better shape. So I encompass a little bit of everything. In the beginning, I was trying to market myself more towards a certain like type of person, but at this point, I'm just picky with who I work with, and I want to work with people who want to work for themselves. So it's opened up a lot more at this point. But a lot of what I do is just, we talk about what is it that you want to change in your life? What are the realistic things that we can do to change that? I instruct people how to do it. A lot of my stuff is usually online. So I have like people in different states and countries, and, you know, I'll program their nutrition, their programming for lifting. They'll send me videos and I'll analyze them. I'll send them videos on like how to fix their cues or things like that. I've posted videos in the past on like little tidbits of like, oh, you know, here's things you can do in your safety bar squat, stuff like that. But people basically get a lot of that, but it's like custom to the person. So I'm not doing anything groundbreaking in the world of online coaching, other than a lot of online coaches don't have the personal experience of like having to go through the stuff that some of these people are going through. And I pride myself in the reason that I enjoy it is because I lived that. And when I can help anybody like make any kind of positive change in their life, as much as like, yeah, everybody wants to make money and stuff, and we charge people for coaching and stuff, like when I can help people make that change, and I see the excitement in them when they start to get it and they start to see the changes in their body, and they get excited about like, oh my God, I lost 10 pounds. I can move better. Like I squatted down to pick something off the ground and my knee doesn't hurt when I do it. I had a jiu-jitsu athlete, an older guy who he had never lifted before. And after a couple months, he was like, you know, my knees don't hurt anymore. Is that normal? And I'm like, yeah, because you're stronger. And it's stuff like that like that gets me excited, because it's not always like, of course I have athletes like that'll hit big PRs that compete and it's awesome. But like I get really excited about the little stuff like that, like people who just like they have a measurable change in their everyday life.
Very cool. All right. You have a variety of stuff. So we're going from like one thing to the next to the next.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're clear that we're switching topics again.
No,
So you're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And we've talked about this earlier in the podcast, but can you just explain how long you've been doing it? And I think for a lot of people may be interested in jiu-jitsu, how have you kind of intermingled lifting and jiu-jitsu over the years?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was supposed to get my black belt a couple different times, but there's a combination of factors. I've been hurt a couple times, and put you out for a bit, and like it just affects timeline of stuff, which is fine at this point of training. Like you want that, but at a certain point in doing jiu-jitsu, you're not doing it for that. You're doing it because you enjoy it. So I don't care about that. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since I was like 19, and I'll be 34 in October. So going on 14 years, if my math is right. As far as training goes, it's definitely changed a lot. Like when I was earlier into jiu-jitsu and started lifting, I was doing a lot of, like I said before, I was doing like, kind of circuit training stuff. And this is before I got into like powerlifting or strongman or anything. Thankfully, I have such a grasp on what programming should look like at this point. So thankfully, I'm able to just program for myself, and mitigate things. I have a lot of people come to me and ask me, like, hey, I've been wanting to try jiu-jitsu. These are like powerlifters or like garage gym people that are like, hey, jiu-jitsu looks fun, but how do I lift and do it? And it's challenging. I'm not going to lie. It is challenging because both of these sports are very physically taxing in different ways. And the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody who's trying to juggle the two is to start small. So if you're a jiu-jitsu athlete trying to add strength training, if you can add 5% strength to your body, it makes a massive difference. So, start small, start with just the basic compound lifts. If you are a lifter trying to add jiu-jitsu, again, start small. Don't expect to hey, if I'm lifting 4 or 5 days a week, I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu 4 or 5 days a week. It's never going to happen. Unless you're running a bunch of steroids and stuff, which most of us aren't, you're not going to be able to recover. It's very physically taxing. So start small. And a lot of it is just how you would manage any kind of lifting programming. It's all about mitigating your volume and your intensity. So I approach it similar to how I would program like a lifting program. Certain phases of a lifting program are going to have higher volume, you're going to have higher intensity of different block, and they phase in different portions. Depending on what you're doing with jiu-jitsu in the year, I do it similar. So if I have a jiu-jitsu tournament coming up, my lifting is going to change because I can't lift super, super heavy close to a jiu-jitsu competition because I'll be wrecked. So mine gets a little more complicated. Juggernaut, they've gotten really good with this stuff because Chad got big into jiu-jitsu, and they have a program, I think, now available for jiu-jitsu, and they do some similar stuff. So most of it is just going to be down to making sure you're balancing your volume, because volume isn't just hey, I lifted this much weight for this much reps. It's also about how much stress you're putting on your body. And jiu-jitsu is a lot of stress on your body as well. So you just got to make sure you're balancing the two. So start small. If you're interested in jiu-jitsu, I highly encourage it. It's great. I've been doing it for a long time, but start small. If you need to, you might, if you're a lifter starting jiu-jitsu, start with smaller, shorter sessions of jiu-jitsu, less times a week, and slowly build up. You might peel back your lifting sessions a little bit. Maybe if you're lifting 5 days a week, go to 4, bring your volume down a little bit, and then you just tweak it over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Two physically taxing things, how to manage those two. Yeah. It's definitely challenging. Yeah. You talked about injuries. What are you currently battling right now?
Oh yeah. So May 1st, I was on pay-per-view for a jiu-jitsu event, and I went to sit down at the very beginning of the match. I went to sit down to the floor, and my hamstring snapped off my leg. So I have had 3 surgeries. The first was to reattach it, and then I kept having issues with infection. So I had 2 surgeries to clean it out. Thankfully, I actually just got cleared to return to some leg training, finally, after months and months of this. So we finally figured everything out. It turned out the sutures that were in my bone, bacteria had gotten into those. But the last surgery, they pulled those out. So that seemed to have resolved the problem. And now my leg is closed up, and I am starting. Actually, I just had my first leg session in 4 months or whatever it's been the other day, and my legs are so sore. I didn't even squat or deadlift yet. I did some belt squat, but with barely any weight on there at all, just for tons of reps. And I've got the worst DOMs I've had in years, but it's it's kind of nice because I've had months of not being able to do anything. So that's what I've been dealing with the last few months. But thankfully, it looks like I'm out of the weeds and I can start to build everything back up.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah, me
definitely.
too.
All right, that's going to do it with our one-on-one interview with Mattie, aka the Muscle Wizard. Mattie, can you tell people where can they find you if they're looking for you?
You can find me on Instagram, The Muscle Wizard. There's a Facebook page as well if you search that. But I'm most active on Instagram.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Did you like tonight's episode? Then be sure to keep your eye out for new episode releases wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay involved on our social media sites by following Garage Gym Experiment and taking part in our Sunday surveys on Instagram so that you can be a part of these conversations. Like, follow, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and get involved on our website for all your home gym content needs. I want to thank Mattie for jumping on with us today. Jake, do you have anything else left for the listeners?
Nope.
You heard it from the boss. We're done. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.